Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. October 1st, 2017. I can tell you exactly where I was. I was in my living room, and I'm pacing back and forth. I'm looking at my phone, and there's a story about the Route 91 Harvest Festival. And I know for a fact that my buddy Wayne D is on stage, and he's helping to host that festival. He's working for an iHeart radio station in Las Vegas. And I'm scared to death because shots have rang out. And I know for a fact that he's in that area. Both he and his wife are in that area. And I'm scared for him. I'm scared for his wife. I'm scared that they both could be one of the reported dead or injured at that point. So me having news training, I know this much. I'm going to send him one text. And I just sent him a text saying, I'm praying that you're okay. That you're alive, you're okay, and you're safe. Just get back to me as soon as you get this and are safe and can answer me back. I stayed up till about 5 o'clock that morning. And I got a text back from Wayne saying, hey, dude, thanks for the text. I appreciate it. My relatives have been blowing me up nonstop. And we're okay. And then he proceeded to explain what had happened with him. And I know he's listening. He listens to the show quite often. He and I talk a few times a week, even to this day. Wayne is now in the Nashville market and doing well. And I know it still scars him to this day, that incident. I know it's still rough for him to this day to talk about that incident. And I didn't ask him to comment about that incident today. But we are going to talk about the Route 91 Harvest Festival and that shooting with our guest today, who's gone deeper into this incident than anyone ever has. Mike Turber is our guest today, and he's done some amazing work getting inside this shooting. Stephen Paddock was the shooter that day. He got up to the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay and did something that nobody could have done. He managed to kill 58 people that day, injure, I believe it was over 100 people that day, shooting down into a crowd. Now, at first it was reported as domestic terrorism. We know now that's not the case. Mike was the one who sorted that out. We know there were other misconceptions having to do with that day. It's Mike's work that sorted that out. We were told a bunch of other misconceptions about a lot of this. And Mike's got a wonderful documentary out there called Money Machine, which we'll link to, that you can watch, that there's a lot of misconceptions that we'll talk about today. Mike's also managed to score an interview with Stephen Paddock's brother, Eric. He's the only person. The mainstream media hasn't been able to talk to anybody close to Stephen Paddock, but Mike's managed to do that and get a perspective on this shooter who ended up killing himself shortly after he took out 58 people. Now, I am going to put the preface here. This is not an apologist show for Stephen Paddock. Stephen Paddock did a terrible thing. And you'll find that Mike doesn't apologize for Stephen Paddock either. But we do get a little bit of a perspective of why Stephen Paddock did what Stephen Paddock did that day. By what Mike's done with his investigative work and what we're about to reveal on this show. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike. Mike is not only an investigative reporter and a darn good one at that, but also is a former military intelligence specialist and a darn good one at that. I'm going to bring him in right now. We'll talk a little bit about his background. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome in for the first time here to True Crime Tuesday, Mike Turber. Mike, welcome in.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate that. Thanks for the intro. There's a lot of accolades here. I don't know if I'm going to live up to everything you said, but I'll try my best.
Oh, absolutely. I guess I get a little flustered talking about the day too, because it was quite personal to me. Tell me how you get involved in this story and how you're brought into this story.
Well, that night, it was shortly after the shooting was over. It started hitting the news and stuff, and I came on to different news programs to listen. I had my scanner with me, so I was trying to listen into the radio calls and stuff to get a perspective as to what's going on. And at the time, no one had any idea that this was going to become the largest mass shooting in United States history. No one had any idea really what was going on. There's just a lot of confusion, which basically being in Vegas and the number of people that were there even created more confusion as people were interviewed, and there were multiple shooters. There's shooters at Bellagio. There's shooters all up and down the strip, in the trees, up in the towers, all kinds of different things. And so as I was watching this, it was classic, a lot more questions than answers. And we knew, especially being Vegas, based on, obviously Vegas is Vegas. Anything that happens bad there is going to be quickly brushed aside so they can get back to business as usual, which is exactly what happened. But, a lot of the questions that were left on the table, I thought, wow, this is, going on here, and a day or so goes by. But I had received a phone call from a longtime friend who would just say he was very high up in the intelligence community, as high as you can get. And he called me and he says, "Hey, you're obviously looking at the Vegas thing." He says, "Why don't you get over there and get some answers? Because I don't think anyone else is going to get any answers. And the people that are there now are probably not going to be the people that are going to get the answers. So you want to get over there." And I said, "No, I was already planning on that anyway." But so I did. And I ended up going over there within a week or so. I was pretty much over there almost every day. The first person I came in contact with that actually led me into this was Catherine Lombardo. And when I talked to her, I had found a specific piece of evidence that no one had. And this is how all this really snowballed. The footage, the CCTV footage that existed at the time was all taken by MGM. MGM sent out all the security guys to all their owned hotels and adjacent properties and things like this, and just got all the security footage back. Mm-hmm. They didn't want that leaking out, to the press and things like this. Well, I decided I'll go look for that as well. And I ended up finding some CCTV footage, basically closed caption, security camera of a parking lot. And the owner of the business, I asked him if I could acquire whatever he has on that camera that's aimed towards the two tanks, remember the two fuel tanks, right, that's the Paddock was shooting at, trying to get to explode or whatever. And that camera was aimed directly at him. So I asked him, I said, "Does anyone come by here and ask you for this footage?" He said, "No." I said, "Wow, does it run 24 hours a day?" He said, "Yes. And it's not just motion. So it basically records the whole thing." So I said, "Excellent." I said, "Have you looked at this footage?" He said, "No." He says they can't really get into it because he's not really sure how the back end of it works. So I ended up acquiring that from him. The footage was off by a day. The way they had set up the camera system was off by a day. And once I got that footage, and I had full access to the security system, full access. And as I was looking through it, I actually noticed that the tanks were not the story for this particular footage, but a female was running from the concert and had been shot. And the people that were with her boyfriend and her best friend, picked her up and had pulled her into the parking lot directly in front of the camera and laid her down and stayed with her while she passed. And she had already passed at that point, but they didn't really know. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, I had a decision to make, because no one had any footage at all, and this was the only security camera footage. And so I decided to contact one of the attorneys. The attorneys happened to be Catherine Lombardo, and I gave her the footage. And next thing you know, it's on Fox with Tucker Carlson and stuff like that. But the decision to do that was rough, because you're actually putting out footage of someone dying, and I did not really want to do it. It took 3 days to make that decision. Yeah. But it was important because a lot of people that were there, they didn't know which direction they had left. They didn't know if they could, they might later have to prove that they were there. And so a lot of people came through that footage that I have. Hundreds of people are on that one video. So I started getting contact with a lot of the victims or the survivors and stuff, and they wanted access to the footage, the full thing. And so I gave them whatever they needed, and that was it. And that snowballed into everything else. So Catherine Lombardo was my main contact at that time. And she asked several questions. One was, how did he get the weapons to the room? Because at the time, no one knew. And several other questions were, once he got the weapons to the room, what happened? When was this window busted out? The other thing was, as far as insurance is concerned and some other issues that they had, when did Stephen Paddock actually die? When did he commit suicide? All of these questions could not be answered by normal means. Mm-hmm. The MGM lawyers, that lawyer group, were basically closed, radio silent. They were completely radio silent. No one could get any information out of them at all. And this frustrated the attorneys because they weren't getting answers. That night, you had 58 people that died that night. You've had 2 people that have died since that night.
Yeah.
And including Stephen Paddock, you'd had 61. And then you had over 800 that were injured, over 800, over, I think, 400 or so that were actually shot. So out of all of this, MGM was essentially controlling the narrative. They knew that there were going to be lawsuits involved. Live Nation, which is who put on the concert, they had their own issues. Catherine Lombardo was the first lawyer to actually file a lawsuit against MGM and Live Nation or what have you. And a lot of that, a lot of the questions that led up to them getting the answers that they needed so they can move forward in a settlement case, because in a settlement case, you have to basically prove that not only negligence was a part of it, but you also had the ability of them to actually either prevent it in the first place, or once it started happening, quickly recognize what was going on and control the situation. Neither one was done. So those were their avenues.
I guess the first sigh of relief, and I use this term very, very loosely here, Mike, would be, and you'll see where I'm going when I throw this to you, is in the first few hours, days of this attack, ISIS claims twice to say that they were part of this, that this shooting was that they're behind this, right, which we know now to be completely false.
Right. And at the time that rumor did take off, and it had a lot of teeth to it. It had a lot of traction. The reason being is that ISIS is not known for making false claims. If they claim they did something, they probably did it. But and then for them to do it twice, like you said, they did it 2 times. And then that starts the conspiracy theories, which this case was riddled with numerous. I've never seen a case have this many conspiracies involved with it in one case. Of course, Vegas being what it is, MGM being what they are, and then all the different pieces of the puzzle that they couldn't put together. So this allowed people to make up a lot of different stories or a lot of different alternative theories about to what happened. So then you look at the top of the Mandalay Bay. Top of Mandalay Bay is the Four Seasons Hotel. Mm-hmm. Four Seasons Hotel is owned by Gates and also Saudi Arabia. So you have a lot of these Saudis were in town about 2 weeks prior to this. And as anyone knows, that was the nationality of Osama bin Laden. And one thing leads to another. And then you have all kinds of different directions that this thing could have taken. And that's essentially what happened. And as that being the case, you had many people that were putting out stories that people were running with it. Helicopter theory. The crowd was shot by helicopter.
Yeah.
And that was a guy, but he goes by the name of John Cullen. It's not his real name, but we debunked that almost overnight. But that theory still holds to this day. Many people believe that that's what happened. They don't believe that a single man, 64 years old, from the 32nd floor, was able to do what he was able to do. There's a lot of theories about the weapon being belt fed instead of it being a bump stock, all these different things. But, a lot of it was essentially people getting in that limelight, which is not something that I was trying to do at the time. It's just basically get the information for the attorneys so the survivors can move on with their lives.
But Mike, let's face it, you're on the 32nd floor. That's a killing field. I mean, it really is. You're setting duck.
Yeah, you're shooting into a barrel of fish. Essentially, is a very bad way to say it, but that's effectively what was happening. And the thing about it was, as far as the crowd is concerned, the first few shots, I originally believed were being fired into those tanks. I thought that, okay, maybe that's what he's doing first. He's going to get this tanks on fire. That will get anyone on that side of the Route 91 to come his direction, which is directly adjacent, the opposite side. Later, I found out after doing some analysis that wasn't the case. But at the time, that's what we thought. And as he was doing this, there was a lot of chaos. People didn't know where to go. Mm-hmm. So not only did they not know where to go, and there's no true direction given by the security team that was there. They were hearing these sounds being bounced off of the buildings. You had all these hotels are huge, basically walls around Route 91,
right,
and around that concert venue, and this created a lot of echoing, which also gave to the rise of those shots are coming from over here. Well, what you heard over here was an echo, and those shots came from over here. But it was quickly figured out that the shots were coming from Mandalay Bay. Even the officer, you can hear him on the radio call saying it's coming from Mandalay Bay halfway up. But yeah, that was with the amount of people that were there. They said there were around 22,000. In reality, it was around 12 or so thousand because they just added all 3 days together, and it was 22,000. But it was actually about 12 or so thousand. We counted them. That many people there. You had the first shots were him, I guess, lining up his sights, so to speak. And then he went full auto, essentially, with the bump stock, which is not truly full auto, but it's close enough to where people couldn't tell the difference.
Right.
And 13 or so volleys. And the way he did it was, again, like you said at the beginning of this, we don't want to, put him on a pedestal by any means, but it was fairly well planned out. Instead of changing clips, he would actually change weapon. It was just for him. He had enough money. When he was done with one, instead of waiting for the barrel to get too hot by changing clips out, he just grabbed a whole nother weapon and started firing with that. And that's why there's time delays in between the volleys that are there. And that was good that those time delays were there because that allowed a lot of people to get out. But it was not a good night for there.
You point something out. He had enough money. He had money and resources. And there's an interesting story here, and one that comes from his own brother, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But he managed to amass weapons, bullets, money, and he did it all legally. And managed to get all this in an unusual way up to that room, and he got 2 rooms together and adjoining rooms at that. Yeah. And put all this together. And the reasons why are actually a little astounding. This had nothing to do with a vendetta against America. It had nothing to do about a vendetta against a political idealism. It had nothing to do with anything other than a reason that I think kind of confounds me when we look at things, and having sat down with his brother, I'm still in shock as to how this much rage comes out over the reason why it came out. But I want to stick to the mechanism of him accruing all of this and how it happened. Okay. Tell us a little bit about Stephen Paddock and how he goes about accruing this type of firepower. What was it about Stephen Paddock that he got that type of money? How did he do it?
Well, basically, early on, he was basically an accountant, so he had that accountant's background. He actually, one time he worked for Lockheed Martin. And what he would do is he would use a lot of his knowledge of how banking systems work and things like this to acquire properties. So he acquired apartment complexes. This was the main thing that he did. And him and his brother Eric would work with him, and going in and getting the places ready to go and getting people in there and what have you. And that's essentially how he made his money. After that, after he started making his money, he had several passions of his. One of the passions was flying planes. He liked to fly planes, so he bought his own plane, got a pilot's license and stuff like this. He liked to travel, and he loved to go to Vegas. He used to live in Texas, and then he moved to Mesquite in Nevada. So he was very close to Las Vegas, had a house there. The woman that was in his life was Mary Lou Danley. She was his hostess at Reno, which is where he used to gamble. And when he always would say that he made a lot of his money by gambling, when in reality most of his money was made through properties and stuff like this. But he was a fairly decent gambler, and his game of choice was video poker. He didn't interact with a lot of people. He wasn't a table game kind of guy. So he would sit at a video poker machine for hours and hours and hours. But he did it in a very smart way. He would learn which machines paid essentially what percentages, and he would see which one had the highest percentage of payout. And he would wait until that machine became available, and he would just play that one machine. And then once he got the amount of money he wanted, he would move on. But with that comes the perks. This is where the motive comes in. This is where we're going to go with this.
Okay.
The perks that came along with this were, free room, free this, free that. You treat it like royalty. And in Reno, he had gotten to the top. Essentially, he maxed out. The only way to go up from there was to go over to Vegas, where he ended up being a smaller fish in a much bigger pond, which is how Eric likes to describe it. Eric being the brother. Mm-hmm. And as such, he probably didn't get as noticed as much, which in some ways worked in his favor, in some ways kind of didn't. But they started playing with his comps in Reno. Once he got to a certain point, they just weren't going to really pay him the comps like they used to. It's just like, no more. So, and just like Eric says, it says, oh, Mr. Paddock, you're not going to get the 3 times points on the slot tournament, because you're already at the highest levels. We want other people to enjoy too. And it's like, well, they're changing all that. So changing that made him go to Vegas. Well, the same thing started happening in Vegas. So in the end, we had the motive was the biggest thing about this whole case, was no one could figure out why he did it. And that's what got me to contact the brother. The only way you're going to find out what's going on through the mind of an individual is to either interview that individual, which in this case obviously couldn't happen, or interview the persons that are closest to him. The only person that I could think of that knew him better than anyone was his brother, Eric. Mm-hmm. So I contacted Eric, and he didn't want to talk to anybody. He said he did 2 little interviews in front of his house, and that was kind of the end of it. And I didn't want anything to do with it. So I left him a couple messages saying, hey, I'm a nobody out here. I'm just a guy trying to figure some things out. I told him, I said, I'm spending my own money doing this investigation. I'm not monetized online or any of these things. I literally am just trying to figure something out. I said, here's a question, if you can answer. And then that was me leaving a message. A week goes by and he contacts me back. And he had looked at some of the things I had produced and put on online. And he liked what he saw because I was one of the few that were not going down that conspiracy, trap, that rabbit hole. And I was really trying to get actual answers forensically. All of these different things that were very specific points that the lawyers wanted, I was trying to get. And so he admired that. Had a problem with the reporter that was trying to talk to him before, which was a RJ reporter, Review Journal. Mm-hmm. And he says that he'll talk to me. And said, okay. So we kind of hit it off in an odd way when I talked to him on the phone. And there was a lot of parallels that I could see between him and his brother, and some, and trying to get into the mind of Stephen was going to be a little easier to try to go through Eric, but at the same time, I wasn't going to use Eric, Right. So I said, let's just talk whenever it's necessary. And he's kind of put, laid back too, but in some ways he's kind of in your face, as you could tell by some of the interviews that he did.
Yeah.
Very irritated with the Metro Police. He did not want to talk to them. Didn't want to talk to, CBS, NBC, ABC. Everybody was trying to contact him because he was good on camera, so to speak, because he was very animated. But he essentially had some of the answers that I needed. The motive was the question. It took 2 years for the FBI to finally come out and say what they believed the motive was, and lo and behold, it was the motive that I had 2 years previous to them coming out. So, kind of a frustrating thing.
One of the things I'm kind of interestingly fascinated with is that Eric's unashamedly candid about the fact that not only Stephen, but himself, he'll even admit himself that he's not necessarily a great guy. He'll tell you, well, I'm a decent guy, but unabashedly, I get things that I want, right? I'll be nice to people to get things that I want.
That's right. That's him.
And if I don't sit out on my front porch and just say hi to everybody who walks by, then I'm a bad guy, I guess. And to me I think he was trying to search for the word antisocial with you when he was having the interview with you. And he was, I think that's probably the best way to describe how he was trying to describe his brother to you, and maybe himself. Antisocial, would that be fair to say? That maybe that would describe?
That would be a fair description. One of the things that I mentioned to Eric was that I believed his brother had Asperger's. A lot of the characteristics that were exhibited by Paddock were just that. Socially, he was very socially awkward. Did not know what to say at the right time, or just kind of like the guy that's a little bit off, but still likable, still a nice person. Seemed to be, right. Was very knowledgeable. Now, both Eric and Stephen, extremely intelligent.
Right.
He's one of the most intelligent friends that I have, as far as Eric is concerned. And as such, you generally can see where some parallels were there, where the two brothers kind of trying to gel. But keep in mind that their father, the father of both Eric and Steve, was on the FBI wanted list. He was the number one on that wanted list for a while, and for a very long time. I think Eric had mentioned it was the longest in FBI history, but that we found out that necessarily wasn't the case, but it was for a very long time. And he was able to hide in all these different areas, and so early on, a lot of people said, well, maybe he's trying to one up his dad. Is that possible? And Eric didn't see it that way. He saw that there was a issue that Stephen had, but he didn't see it. He didn't see the telltale signs that this was going to happen. If he did, he would have tried to stop it. So all of this was done. The planning and everything was done very much in secret, behind the scenes. Mary Lou Danley would be the only other person that might have some information that would shed some insight into what was going on. But she was, her lawyer stepped up and said she's not going to do any interviews or anything. And to this day, she still hasn't. But, the question was there is to, the question of why. And that leads us full circle back again. He was not getting the comps like he wanted. His blood pressure medication made him sick, which was not, and he had to take it, which also creates some other side effects that were not good for his relationship with Mary Lou Danley, on the romantic side. So that was an issue. And he was being, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we get too deep into that, why don't we take our break? Because I have a feeling there might be other issues here, too. Let's take our break. And when we come back, let's talk about the different reasons why Stephen Paddock might have killed himself and why he wanted to take other people with him. We'll talk about that when we come back. And then also, when we come back, Mike, let's talk a little bit about how Vegas might have taken this tragedy and wanted to maybe cash in a little bit on this, and how they turned it against the victims of this tragedy. We'll talk about that as well, because this story gets convoluted to a point where it becomes almost obscene.
Yeah, very bizarre.
We'll talk about that when we come back. Money Machine is the name of the documentary that's out there, and we've got a link to in the description of this program to that documentary, so you can go check out the documentary itself. It's very interesting, folks. I encourage you to go check that out. We've got links to Mike as well, so you can check out his work as well. Some great stuff out there. I've got a link to the video of the, Mike sent me a couple of videos. I got a link to the video of the actual incident itself. Mike's put together a video of that day, which is interesting, which has got multiple camera angles. And I'm going to put a link to the video of Mike. I believe it's the video of you and Laura Loomy, Mike. Laura Loomer, I'm sorry. Of the two of you going, and we're going to talk about this when we come back, going into Mandalay Bay, supposedly the impenetrable Mandalay Bay. And we'll talk about this when we come back. And I believe it was 57 times after the shooting you went into
I took her on the 27th strip, but I've done that 57 times.
57 times. Supposedly, the elusive Mike Turber, my guest, the magician, managed to 57 times get into this impenetrable service elevator at Mandalay Bay, the same one that Stephen Paddock got the weapons into and up to the 32nd floor. The one that Stephen Wynn claims Steve Wynn claims you can't get into without security. Our guest managed to do 57 times after the shooting. We're going to take that video and put it in the description of this program so you can see for yourself just how easy it was for our guest to do. We'll have that video as well, so you can watch that video. I was astounded, folks. You will be astounded. We'll talk a little bit about it when we come back. More with our guest, Mike Turber. Folks, again, you're not going to believe the degree of ineptitude when you start to watch a lot of what Mike has put together. It will astound and amaze you. But again, Money Machine is the name of the documentary. I want you to check it out. Link in the description of this program. When we come back, more with Mike Turber here on the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is Mike Turber, the name of the documentary, Money Machine. We got a link in the description of this program so you can check it out for yourself. We're talking about the Route 91 Harvest shooting in 2017, October 1st, 2017. And we're talking about the circumstances surrounding Stephen Paddock, Mandalay Bay, specifically how this whole thing got bungled and how the Las Vegas Police Department, I think, kind of fed us a line, and how and the casinos for that matter, and how MGM fed us a line, and how we're digesting it to this day, and how the story how the story is formed itself. And I think how Mike has, and your co-producer in this are trying to turn that narrative to the truth. Really, is that fair to say, Mike?
Yeah, that's fair to say. Very, very early on, MGM decided to control the narrative as to what was going out to the public. It was pretty well understood that Sheriff Lombardo and also the Commissioner Sisolak, who was in almost every shot you see of Sheriff Lombardo, you'll end up seeing Sisolak in the background. And we knew that there is some, that Lombardo was running for re-election. That was election year. So that's why a lot of the footage that should have been out early on did not make it out, which would have shown some of the issues that they had because it was election year. And then come to find out, Sisolak decides to run for governor and uses essentially the Las Vegas shooting as a springboard to put him into that position. And later on, Lombardo runs for governor, and he wins governor. So
wow.
Doing that, and neither one of them would have been in the positions that they're essentially in, or becoming governor, if this event hadn't happened. So using a tragedy like this as a springboard to push forward your political gain, it's pretty low.
There's a clip, Mike, as things are starting to become, or as things are unraveling, as evidence is being found by journalists. And there's an interesting conundrum here that the RJ, or Review Journal, journalists are sitting there in press conferences and kind of folding their hands and saying to other journalists that are coming in and finding evidence that things aren't quite as they seem with the Paddock investigation. And it's said in Money Machine, that other journalists are finding the little tidbits, and they're standing up in press conferences and questioning Lombardo outright and saying, "Hey, what about this? What about this?" Lombardo, there's a clip of Lombardo saying, "I don't like your question. That's not how we answer questions or ask questions here."
And that was Laura Loomer that he was saying that to. That she was the one that was the problem for him.
Yeah.
That's why I took her up the elevator too, because I figured, what? At that point, no one in law enforcement really liked what we were doing, especially what Laura Loomer was doing. And who better to bring up in the elevator and get that put on Fox News than Laura Loomer? So I took her up. The next thing you know, we're on Fox News with that. So yeah, it was basically, we knew we were pushing their buttons. We knew that they were pushing everybody's buttons because they were not giving out the information that we knew to be true. There were several questions left unanswered that they just simply would not answer. Some questions that really had nothing to do with the direction of the investigation, but just some simple answers to some certain questions. But what we later found out was that if they had answered, say, question A, it was going to lead to a new question, which would bring up evidence C, and we would have seen things like the officer who froze on the floor just below, an officer who was in a position that could have thwarted much of that attack, froze. And he's a training officer, an officer who trained other officers, literally froze in the hallway just below where the shooting was happening. You could hear the shots ringing out in the background. You knew people were being shot. People were being killed at that moment. And this officer froze. And the people that were with him, which include the trainee that he was with and the two officers that were from Mandalay Bay Security, were standing there going, why is he stopping? What's going on? They didn't really know what was going on. That video was part of a body-worn camera footage that had been requested by the Review Journal and many other outlets as well. Essentially to find out what was going on, what were the officers doing, where were they, and all these different things that led up to the breach of the room. And as such, once the Review Journal realized that they weren't getting any footage, they were the lead in a lawsuit that was basically put against Metro, and they were forced to give out the body-worn cameras and various other evidence. But they were not giving it out in order. Normally it's in chronological order. In this case, it wasn't, which we found odd, but we didn't know why. Well, the why is because it was an election year. The other why is because some of the evidence that we found on some of this body-worn camera footage asked a lot of questions. Keep in mind, there's leaked images that came out from this scene. I was the person who figured out that his body had been moved. During my investigation of it, I was able to determine that. We'll talk about why or how later, because you don't have enough time in this show to do it. But we have all of these different questions that weren't being answered, but some of the answers were inside this evidence that was put out. And because it wasn't put out in chronological order, we figured out, after the election was over and he secured his position as still being the sheriff, now some of the questions that were asked are getting answered. One of which was that footage of the officer freezing in the hallway. That made a lot of people very upset.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these things that were happening, and that led to more questions, as to what was really going on here. And it's Vegas. They wanted to get back to business as usual. This thing was kind of swept under the rug, so to speak. And the MGM controlled the narrative because they wanted to control the settlement. They knew that they were going to be sued. And that brought up a lot of other questions that we brought out in the documentary.
There's even minutia in evidence that's astounding. There's a scene in Money Machine where you say, there's just a way that Stephen Paddock even broke the glass in the hotel room. That he didn't shoot the glass out; he broke it with a hammer, and it'd be very easy to find out how to get this evidence. So you go about going to find it, but yet the minute you go to try and find it, there's Metro Police right there to try and deter you.
They're trying to deter us, and one of the things was I wanted pieces of that glass, and I figured that if it was shot out, the glass would be at a certain distance away. Some of the glass would be a certain distance away that probably wouldn't have been found. And if it was knocked out, which is what we found out to be the case, that it would be in a different location. So I went to these locations, and sure enough, I was able to find and secure quite a bit of that glass. One of the first things I did was to run a gunshot residue test on the glass to see if there was any residue on the glass that would show that the glass was shot out. It wouldn't be 100% guaranteed that would be the answer, but if there was residue on it, that would tell me that the glass that's on the ground had to have been shot out, because how did the residue get there? So that's why that seemed to be important. A lot of people early on didn't understand the importance of that, but the lawyers had a lot of questions that they needed answers to, because they had to go into the settlement agreement or the settlement talks with as much ammunition, so to speak, as possible. I use a bad analogy, but they needed a lot of those answers, and one of which is, at what moment did Paddock die? And that question was not answered by anyone. And so I took it upon myself to figure that out, and I was able to do so. The first interview that Sheriff Lombardo gave right as everything was settling down after the shooting was over, and it's about an hour or so afterwards, he said that their officers had engaged the suspect. And listening to some of the radio calls, that didn't sound right, because we would have heard a lot of other information going on, and that was not the case. Keep in mind, it took, I think it was an hour and 17 or so minutes for them to breach that room. That's a long time. So the shooting started at 10:05, and they didn't breach the room until after 11 something. I can't remember the exact moment. It was like an hour and 17 minutes or something like that later, for them to finally get to the room and breach it. And they were right by one of the locations where the SWAT team is known to assemble and to breach that room. But they ended up putting a ragtag SWAT team together to breach the room, and they did it. And even so, one of the other pieces of footage that was not released before the election was that during the breach, the breach into the second room, an officer let off a 3-round burst into that room. So there was another, this, because the breach of the door was such a drastic explosion, I guess it just startled him, and he, boom, 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 you hear 3 shots. And I'm like, wait a second, did I just hear 3 shots? And you're listening to the audio, and I'm sitting there with headphones on, just trying to analyze all of this audio to see if the officers are saying inappropriate things, or when was Stephen Paddock's body moved, all these different things. And I knew I heard it. And myself and another investigator, he also had heard it. And we couldn't believe that that's what we were hearing. But that officer had accidentally fired off a 3-round burst. That was not revealed. When an officer's weapon is fired, they have to report that. That was another thing that was pushed under the rug. They did not want that information getting out. So quite a bit, actually.
Wow. There's a lot of information that they didn't want out from this case. And it seems like every little bit that they don't want out, you seem to be tripping over and digging back up. It's kind of an interesting bit there, Mike. Are there still pieces of information you're finding, or is it stuff that you've pretty much dug up everything that they've tried to bury?
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. but there's every question that either the lawyers had or I found myself having, we were able to answer. There are some rather bizarre surprises that happened. One of them, the major ones being that during the settlement, the judge that they decided to choose to be the judge that would handle the settlement case. And the settlement was hovering somewhere around 800 million, 850 million, somewhere in that range. And we were trying to figure out, why is it staying at this amount? I mean, this is the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. This is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been joined into this case. I can now say how many people it was. It was about 4,400 people that joined on the case.
Wow.
Back during the time I was under an agreement not to be able to mention that. But so you had this number of people that are suing this company, and then you have this judge who is picked to handle the settlement. This judge was Jennifer Togliatti. Well, Jennifer Togliatti, that name sounds a little bit familiar. So a guy that I know, his name's Roger Keenest. He had pushed forward the information that the person that handles all of Mandalay Bay and all of MGM security also is a vice president. So you have the head of security for Mandalay Bay and MGM, who's also a vice president and head of all their three S's, their security, surveillance, and whatever the other one is. And so you have him, and his name is George Togliatti. I wonder if they're related. Yeah, they're related. Jennifer Togliatti is the daughter of the head of MGM Security, George Togliatti. I don't know about you, but that seems like that would be a major conflict, to have the person that's handling the settlement of the largest mass shooting in U.S. history be the daughter of the head of MGM Security.
And Jennifer should have, she should have recused herself right away.
Yeah. She should have recused herself. She didn't. That was kind of an area of contention for a few people. And one of those people was Roger Keenest. Roger Keenest, the guy that gave us the information, is also the only person to not enjoin on this lawsuit. He basically refused and pulled it out because he didn't want anything to do with it. But, that is what it is. But only in Vegas. I mean, this could just not be probably people listening to this have never heard this information before. Right. It was not, put out there on the news. But this, to me, is one of the most major, most egregious things that you could do, is have the daughter of the head of your security handle your settlement.
Yeah.
And the settlement case. And she's a great judge. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with her as an individual and her being a judge and things like this. But immediately, one of the things I noticed was I went to, once I found out the relationship between the two, I said, well, let me find out how they talk to each other or whatever. So I went on the page and started doing screenshots of the pages and their conversations on Facebook and stuff like this. And then next thing you know, that information is gone. As soon as we leaked that information out, that this was what was going on, all hell broke loose as far as the survivors are concerned. They were like, we're not going to get a fair deal. She's going to control it. Come to find out, all the above, which has still to this day a lot of questions to it. I mean, I can't say I don't want to be sued myself, but
right.
I can tell you can tell my thoughts on this. But the question of the $800 or so million settlement of it staying at that amount was simply because that was the maximum of their outlay on their insurance. The insurance was going to put out $750 or so million, or right around that mark. And then they're like, oh, okay. Now I see why they wanted to keep it that amount. So out of all of this, MGM was only out of pocket about $51 million. That's it. And that may sound like a lot of money to some, but in this type of a case with this number of people, not really.
It's nothing. I mean, if you look at the sheer amount of money they probably take in a year, that's nothing.
Yeah, and then divide the settlement over that dollar amount over 4,400 people. Yeah. So
that's nothing. Yeah. That's really nothing. There's also a point too where, depending on how this thing washes out and what type of verdict there is as to what type of attacker Stephen Paddock is, the casino tries to go after the victims and sue the victims. What's the story behind this?
Well, the story behind that was basically it's a part of the Safety Act that stipulates that if someone if it's ruled a terrorist type of attack, then that would pull it into being a federal type case. And they felt like if this went to trial, that they were not going to get a fair trial in Vegas. So the best way to do it would be to convert this into a federal case. And one of the first things they decided to do was to involve the Safety Act. And they essentially sued the victims. So one of the attorneys, his name's Craig Island, he was actually interviewed on whatever station it was. He basically said right out, he says, these survivors, these victims of this case are being sued for being shot. It's just absurd. No one had ever tried this before, but that's one thing that they tried. Now, that was quickly, I think over the period of 3 days, it was so ridiculous. They had gotten so much bad backlash from this crazy idea. But it was a strategy. And then whatever attorney decided that was an appropriate strategy to do, quickly learned that it probably wasn't. And they did pull that back. But that really pissed off a lot of people. I mean, you're going to sue us you're going to sue us essentially for suing you, because the only way that they could convert this into a different case is if the Safety Act was enacted. And it couldn't be because it was not an act of terrorism. So
now, I'm surprised the lawyer didn't push it as still being part of the Safety Act, because terrorism can be stretched out to a certain point. Now, you can claim, sure, Paddock wasn't part of a terrorist organization, but now mass shootings do technically qualify as an act of terrorism.
Right. And it comes under the clause of domestic terrorism.
Yes, domestic terrorism.
Right. And because early on, people thought he was an agent of ISIS, or he was a this or that, or they were looking for ties. Oh, he worked for Lockheed Martin. He must have sold some, all kinds of different things that were going on. None of them being true. But if you don't have someone coming out correcting all this bad information that was being put out, then the bad information definitely takes a life of its own. As you well know, and as I well know, we delve in some of the areas of the paranormal. We delve into some of the areas of all these different fringe things. And as such, we see a lot more goofy stuff that we know is just complete hogwash than the average person. And then trying to differentiate between the two, it becomes increasingly difficult over time. And that's what was happening is here. So much bad information was coming out because there was no actual information coming out. People just made up their own information on the fly. And then it took on its own persona and its own story and its own life. And then as such, it just grew and grew and grew. It's just like the story of the helicopter theory. I mean, that guy, me and him went round and round quite a few times. He called myself and another person a hero for figuring out that the moment this Paddock died and that we did actually go through the audio to determine where the shots came from and to prove once and for all, to dispel all of the ninjas in the tree theories, all the helicopter theory and stuff like this, to determine where they were coming from. And that took some time. But he, comes out with his channel, and his whole channel is based on a lie. But those things happen. So, conspiracy theories are going to be there. Right. We just deal with them.
Speaking of, Mike, I want to follow up on that, on the theory as to why Paddock did it. You had started to mention, health. You'd started to mention the fact that these comps were pulled from Stephen Paddock. This vendetta against the casinos.
Right.
There's something that came to mind as I was watching your work, and it started to race around in my mind a little bit, and I wanted to throw it past you.
Sure.
The fact that it keeps being brought up over and over again, a man who's about to commit suicide generally leaves a note or has a manifesto. And it keeps hitting me right between the eyes. Who says he didn't?
Well, we couldn't find any. There was some early on question. There was a laptop that was in his room where the hard drive had been removed. Mm-hmm. One of his, in looking at his history on Chrome, it was determined that he had looked for ways to pull that hard drive out and to get rid of it or whatever. And that was a issue. We thought, well, either A, there's something on there he doesn't want anybody to see because it's bad, or B, there was something on there and he later decided to change his mind. So Eric and I sat down and we brainstormed. Let's figure out why he would not leave a note, assuming that he didn't, why he would not leave a note. And the only thing we could come to is based on our understanding of Paddock. And based on, my knowledge in talking with Eric, was that he did it because it would screw with their minds. That was his thing. It was like, okay, I won't leave an answer as to why this is done. I'm not going to put out a manifesto because what's he want him to do? The only thing on the manifesto would be for himself, essentially, is like, okay, you got to treat people better when you're doing their comps. You can't take their comps away. The average person reading this in a newspaper would go, who gives a shit? No one cares. Sorry about that, the language.
No, it's all right. Sorry.
But, so that would be an issue that wouldn't make a lot of sense. And that's what, Eric basically told me, that he would do that just to screw with people. And he basically, if that's what he did, he essentially accomplished it, because there was a lot of things that we couldn't get answers to. And even to this day, there's still some things. I mean, I talk with Eric, periodically, and one of the things that came up was there any indication, any sign? He says he racked his brain for a long time looking at text messages and emails that had gone back and forth, trying to figure out, was there a sign? Was there anything that would lead him to think that this might be a possibility? Said nothing at all.
But even like one word, gotcha, or I burned the kingdom down, or something even boastful to Steve Wynn, you would think there would be something, right?
Yeah, you would think, but when you think about the bigger picture, if we had the answers, we wouldn't be asking the questions to this day.
True.
What, 8-9 years later? So we're looking at a very long time of this. If he would have gave us all the answers, he wouldn't be talked about. This case is unlike any other mass shooting, period. There just is nothing like it. He doesn't necessarily fit the profile of what you would think, although probably the most dangerous person on the planet is a middle-aged white guy. So that seems to be the case. But he's 64 years old. Had money. He had lost, his money had dwindled a little bit before this, but not by so much that he couldn't work his way out of it. And he had, he had a lot going for him. But what was not going for him was something internal to him that only he would know, that we could start to surmise. His relationship with Mary Lou Danley was on the rocks. He couldn't fly his plane anymore because of his blood pressure. His blood pressure medication made him sick. It also, had issues in the other department. And that combined with people messing with him is the way he looked at it, because he wasn't a loud person. Stephen never yelled, never raised his voice. That was adamant. Eric was adamant about that. I've never seen him yell at anyone or never anything like that. That was what Eric was telling me. And as such, a lot of those types of people, that type of personality holds things in. And then it's like, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to get you back. I may not yell at you now. I may not hit you. I may not do this or that, but I'm going to get you back. And that kind of seems to be the mentality, in my opinion, as to, what was happening. And that's what he did. So he was trying to get back at the casino industry. It didn't, it was impactful for that moment of time, but Las Vegas is very quick to get back to business as usual. And that was a whole nother story in and of itself.
That's the ultimate aggressive and passive aggressive, right? I mean,
yes,
to take it and take it and take it and then finally just explode. That's the ultimate aggressive and passive aggressive.
And not leave any clues as to why.
Right.
Make people wonder. That to him is, if he's still around, he's wherever he is, which would be down there somewhere. People would think that this was his, his lasting legacy or whatever you want to call it. There's no competition with his dad. That's another theory that's brought out. He's going to one up his dad. No, that's not the case here. But that was talked about early on. A lot of people still believe that, but no. That's not it. He was him, and he has his own little chapter in the book somewhere that this case sits on its own. There's really nothing to compare it with.
I know, as we're running really short on time, I know you've had dealings with the Tiger King series, and I want to talk to you about that on a separate episode. So we'll bring you back to talk Tiger King on another episode. And we also have some UFO stuff we need to talk about. This isn't a one and done, Mike, but we'll bring you back to talk about Tiger King as well, maybe on a separate episode. But can you give us just a blush before we leave people today?
Well, yeah, sure. One of the things that, as with this case, I decided to get involved. And the easiest thing to do to get some answers was to get as close to the case as possible. The closest person that I could get into the mind of Stephen Paddock was his brother, Eric Paddock. So the same thing happened with Tiger King. The way to figure things out was to get close to the person involved. Well, Joe's in jail. He's in prison, so I can't get close to him, even though we do talk. But I decided, well, let me try. So I am one of two people in the world that was able to get to the level of connection with Carol Baskin as I did.
Wow.
So if you want some inside information on her, I had access to everything that she had, a bank account, passports, all these different, everything, every piece of information that you could imagine. She was very forthright, but that's a whole nother story. And man, Tiger King, was that a wild ride or not?
Yeah, it was. Well, I tell you what, we'll bring you back. We'll talk Tiger King. We'll do that in a future episode. And because I know they've talked about wanting to do a sequel to that, but the further we get away from it, it seems like it's going to be impossible to do that.
Yeah, you'd have to. When we did the one for Discovery ID, I was the director of photography on that, and that was essentially trying to determine, what really happened here. Where is Dawn Lewis? Did Carol actually kill her husband? And believe it or not, we got really close to the answer. I got extremely close. Might even have the answer.
Really? Okay, we'll tease that. We'll tease that, and then we'll bring you back. Tell you what, maybe we'll do it in about a month or so. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Mike Turber, my guest. I tell you what, again, Money Machine. We have the link in the description of this program. We also have the link to the video of Mike taking Laura Loomer up. Folks, you got to watch this video. It is insane. I'm just telling you, it's insane how he just goes up to the 32nd floor in the service elevator, the same one that Stephen Paddock took, with his weapons. And you won't believe how many people he walks right by in the service area. It's insane, folks. So we've got that video. And then also there's a video that Mike sent me of the actual day, which from different camera angles, the actual day of the Route 91 Harvest Festival. The only reason I want to post this, and again, viewer discretion advised on that video, I want to show you guys just exactly what kind of chaos happened that day. And when you're involved in a tragedy like that, why it is so hard to survive that type of tragedy. You have to see it for yourself. It's the entire video with police sound in it and everything. It starts out with from across the street, the view from across the street. Mike has done a tremendous job of putting the entire scene together from beginning to end. There's even a guy with a GoPro who's down on the floor of the concert. It's giving his perspective. It paints a wonderful picture of everything that happens in that time frame, from the floor of the concert to getting across the street, and really put you in the scene of that tragedy. It puts you there without being there. And it really lets you know if you have to survive something like that, I think, Mike, it's fair to say you have an idea of exactly what that type of chaos is and just exactly what it's like to be in something like that.
Yeah. And the main 4 screens that you see on the screen when you're watching this, that's actually the security footage from Mandalay Bay. I was able to acquire all of that, and I can actually be just like I was a security officer there and able to move the cameras around. But this footage here is the exact footage that the person sitting behind their security cameras was able to see that night. This is footage that a lot of people have never seen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important stuff. Well, Mike, I thank you so much again for your service and everything you've done for us. It's I tell you, it's important. I don't think people thank investigators that much for what they do to bring the truth to light. It's important work. So I want to thank you, my friend, for everything you've done, and man, keep hitting that pavement, keep bringing the truth to light. That's important work. So. And we'll have you back. We'll talk some Tiger King.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, my friend. It's time now for us to lighten things up a bit. We'll bring in Jessica Freeberg. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time again, the time you've all been looking forward to. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals. And with that, we need a co-hostess. And so what we do is we float on those storm clouds because it's raining to beat the band here in the Twin Cities. We'll float on a storm cloud. We'll go all the way across the Twin Cities. We'll reach out to a co-hostess that has 3 bestsellers in 5 different continents. I don't know how many continents there are. I failed that part of school. And we'll reach out and grab someone who's witty, intelligent, funny. Got to bring the funny on this segment, and also pretty easy on the eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, the Hindustan Times bestseller of all time, Jessica Freeberg. Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm just hoping that we don't get blown away in a tornado.
Well, if we do, then we end up in a movie, in a best-selling one at that. That's on the cock. That's what I call peacock, by the way. But you gotta yell on the cock. I've learned that from the guys from Saturday Night Live. That's what they call peacock.
And then that super hot guy, Glenn, whatever his name is, comes and rescues us. Is that how it happens?
I think so. Glenn.
Ooh.
Glenn who?
I don't know. The guy in the new Twister movie. What's his name? He's also in the new Ram truck commercial that was on the Super Bowl.
Harrison Ford? No. He was in a Jeep commercial.
I'm sure our listeners will know who I'm talking about.
Glenn.
I'm Googling it.
Yeah, you should probably Google that.
No, I'm not good with names. I know your name. Glenn Powell.
Oh, Glenn
That's his name.
Powell. Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy. Yeah.
He's eye candy.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I have no idea. I'm not up on the guy stars so much. I mean, unless they star in comic book movies, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, or comedy.
Did you not see the Twister movie? It was good.
I didn't. No.
Oh, I liked it.
No. If there wasn't a Van Halen song in it, I didn't see it. No. Rest in peace, Eddie. Speaking of, I was going to save this for tomorrow's segment, but Sammy Hagar has a brand new song out. He claims was written with Eddie Van Halen from a dream visitation.
Ooh, that is super cool.
And the video is out now.
I'm going to have to pull that up.
And it's called, what is it called? Something like Goodbye, Thank You. What is it? Goodbye, Thank You, Encore or something like that? Or Encore, Goodbye, Thank You, something like that. I'll have more about it tomorrow, but it's interesting because it sounds like something Eddie wrote.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I totally believe in channeling especially for artists. I think that we do that all the time. In fact, that's like part of my practice. When I sit down and start writing, I do a meditation and I kind of like release myself of the need to be in control, that I'm just a conduit of whatever should be written.
And the entire song is about, it's quite literally about the dream visitation. It's about him sitting there in the dream and Eddie coming to him and him just saying, thank you for the, how does he put it? Thank you for the fame and the fortune. Thank you for the memories. Thank you for, and he's basically just saying, thank you for the good times. And that they sat down and wrote this song. And Joe Satriani is a guitarist on the song. And he said he studied a lot of course, they did this Best of Both Worlds tour that had happened over the past year or so, and then they have this residency coming up in Vegas this next summer. And he had studied a lot of the way Eddie played, and he basically came up with, from what Sammy remembered from the dream, he had written the body of the song, and then he had written the solo accordingly, according to how Eddie did his solos. And it sounds a lot like Eddie. It sounds a lot like Eddie. So it's kind of spooky. It's kind of a spooky song, but it's really cool. So
I love it.
Yeah. Kind of cool. Kind of cool. Also, it's kind of spooky, Jess. We're going to lead with a not so funny, not so dumb crime, not so stupid criminal story, but a story of interest in true crime. We'll tell you that one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent abuse survivors actually died by suicide this past week.
I saw that.
Yeah, Virginia Giuffre ended up dying by suicide.
Crazy. And I saw something on social media where she had written in her social media account that if I die by suicide, I did not do this to myself, basically.
Right. Let the conspiracy theories begin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Virginia Giuffre, one of the most prominent survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse, has died by suicide, according to her family. She was only 41 years old and died in Australia, where she'd been living for several years. I mean, she totally moved away, got away from everything, even got away from the old skeevy prince himself.
Yikes.
Yeah. Giuffre was one of the earliest and loudest voices calling for criminal charges against Epstein and his enablers. Other Epstein abuse survivors later credited her with giving them the courage to speak out. She also provided critical information to law enforcement that contributed to the investigation into and later the conviction of Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as other investigations by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Her family said in a statement to NBC News, "It's with utterly broken hearts that we announce that Virginia passed away last night at her farm in Western Australia. She lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking." Virginia was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. She was the light that lifted so many survivors, the statement said. In the end, the toll of abuse is so heavy that it became unbearable for Virginia to handle its weight. She was raised primarily in Florida. Virginia had a troubled childhood, it says. She said she was abused by a family friend, triggering a downward spiral that led to her living on the streets for a time as a teenager. She was attempting to rebuild her life when she met Maxwell, who was Epstein's close confidant. Maxwell groomed her to be sexually abused by Epstein, and that abuse continued from 1999 to 2002, according to Giuffre. Giuffre also alleged that Epstein trafficked her to his powerful friends, including Prince Andrew and French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel. Epstein, a wealthy financier, died by suicide, supposedly, in a New York jail in 2019. I'm going to throw that conspiracy theory out there, too. Well, he was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. If you believe the story, though, Jess, it was a bag of rocks that got trafficked out of jail, and a separate ambulance split off, and he went to a distant. Yeah, have you ever heard that?
No, I hadn't heard that one.
Haven't you heard the two ambulance theory?
No, so like implying that he's not actually dead, or Ew. I mean, I really kind of hope he is. I hate to say that, but he's a bad man.
There's a theory that it was, although they claim they have pictures of the dead body and everything, and that they have, that he's very much dead. But there's a theory out there that a body bag full of rocks went one way to a coroner, and Epstein went another way. He's very much alive.
I mean, it's not that hard to believe given the high power people that he was, supplying with young women.
Because old Ghislaine is in jail and she hasn't been touched. And she ain't talking.
Interesting. Man, it's just so dark and icky and gross.
It is. Speaking of, Maxwell, a former British socialite, was found guilty on 5 counts of sex trafficking in 2021 for a role in recruiting young girls to be abused by Epstein. Jeffrey filed a federal lawsuit against Prince Andrew in 2021, alleging that he sexually abused her when she was 17. Andrew, who stepped back from his duties as an active royal as controversy related to Epstein swirled around him, agreed to settle the case for an undisclosed amount in 2022. He's denied having sex with her. Brunel, who headed several modeling agencies, was charged with sexual harassment and rape of at least one minor in December 2020. He denied wrongdoing and died by suicide inside his jail cell in February of 2022. Everybody is going by the wayside.
Yeah. And all by suicide, quote unquote.
Yeah. Kind of unusual, huh?
Suspicious.
Yet the only one who stays alive is Prince Andrew.
Yeah. For now, man, if I was involved in that in any way, I'd be so scared.
Several months prior, Jeffrey testified against Brunel in a Paris courtroom in June of 2021. In an interview after her day-long closed-door testimony, Jeffrey said she appeared in court to be a voice for the victims and make sure Brunel was brought to justice. She said, "I wanted Brunel to know that he no longer has power over me, that I'm a grown woman now, and I decided to hold him accountable for what he did to me and so many others." She moved to Australia with her husband before Epstein's 2019 arrest. The couple has 3 children. Now, that's who really suffers throughout this entire thing. And I have to wonder, again, she had 3 children with a husband in Australia. She had started over. So why now?
Right. Like, what would cause her to want to end her life when her life was going well? It seemed like on the outside. I mean, you never know what people are going through, though.
Right. It just says here in an interview for a Dateline NBC special on Epstein that aired before authorities charged Maxwell and Brunel, Jeffrey urged law enforcement to act. She said, "Take us serious. We matter." By the way, if you or someone you know is in crisis, call 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can also call the network, previously known as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, at 800-273-8255, or you can text HOME to 741-741, or visit speakingofsuicide.com/resources for additional resources. That for those of you out there who may be struggling. Okay. Now we can get on with Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. Because we're going to start right here at home, Jess.
All right.
Homegrown. Right here in our own backyard. And we'll start with the Minnesota Vikings draft party. Did you hear about this one?
No, what happened?
Take a sip of my purple Kool-Aid. As we start with our first story, it turns out one of our own, ex-Viking star Adrian Peterson, was popped for a DUI coming home from the Vikings draft party.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, Adrian. Adrian.
He's not ours anymore, though. We don't have to claim him.
Well, evidently we do. If
Right?
he's at the draft party, we have to. I mean, he jumped from team to team to team after he was a Viking, but now he evidently wants to come back and claim Minnesota.
Yeah, so he was at our draft party and then he got busted.
Yeah. Yeah, he wanted a little bit of Minnesota Riz, I guess. Former Minnesota Viking running back Adrian Peterson was booked into Hennepin County Jail early Friday morning on suspicion of driving while impaired. According to Hennepin County jail records, Peterson was booked into custody at 5:16 a.m., so he was out kind of late.
Oh, that is late partying.
A little bit. For a pending fourth-degree DWI charge. Details disclosing where Peterson was driving and the cause of him being stopped by the Minnesota State Patrol are not yet available. Evidently, he wasn't speedy enough to get away, which is typical for a 40-year-old. Just saying. In Minnesota, fourth-degree DWI is a misdemeanor and the lowest level DWI offense, because evidently the cop recognized him.
I bet. Yeah.
Can I just get you to sign this ticket real quick and we'll call it a fourth? It usually applies to first-time offenders and includes a blood alcohol concentration below 0.16. By the way, the legal limit in Minnesota is 0.08. Peterson appeared at the Vikings NFL draft party on Thursday night. Doing the skull clap. He goes, "Skull, hand me another beer. Skull, hand me another beer." Bail for Peterson was set at $4,000, which he couldn't afford because he's got 8 kids.
Wait, does he?
I don't know if it's 8. He's got a lot of them.
Oh, man.
Hitting them switches. You know what I mean? He's scheduled to appear in court on May 9th at 9 a.m. in case you want to be there to get an autograph. bring your helmets and your football cards. Get an autograph.
And jerseys.
And your jerseys, yes. Ooh, yeah, those jerseys. You won't have to pay the signing fee if you get it at the court.
He might not be in a very good mood, though.
Well,
a bad time to approach him.
He's got no choice, Jess. He's there to fight the charges, you know. Maybe Adrian should have taken this Florida man's advice in our next story, because it might have helped him get a 5th degree, which would have, or maybe even got off completely.
Ooh.
This Florida man offered a vodka spritz to Florida deputies after his chase. Here, officer.
One way to do it.
Here's a vodka spritz. Maybe we can come to an agreement. 39-year-old Richard Christopher Smith attempted to evade his capture, but was unsuccessful. Florida man is facing charges after he offered Highland County deputies an alcoholic beverage during a bizarre pursuit. I always find a good way to break the ice with deputies is to offer a nice vodka spritz, Jess. Just
let me make you a drink.
Yeah,
from my car.
It's heavy. Yeah, out of the trunk. Well, let's have a trunk beverage, shall we? And celebrate this nice little chase we just had. Yeah. Around 3 p.m. on Saturday, deputies said 39-year-old Richard Christopher Smith of Miami stole several items, including several alcoholic beverages, and walked out of the Spring Lake Market. Well, it might be a hot beverage, but...
Hey, he was willing to share what he stole.
Yeah,
that's really great.
We can split this up. It's not a big deal. Shortly after deputies arrived, they said Smith was in a black minivan driving circles around the store and then sped off, launching a pursuit that ended several miles later in the parking lot of a business at the Sebring Airport. That sounds refreshing. A nice vodka spritz at the Sebring Airport.
It does. It kind of sounds like a full night of fun.
It does, yeah. During the pursuit, deputies said Smith held a can of Kettle One vodka spritz out the window as he drove by a deputy, trying to get him to stop, telling the deputy, "I was just going to give you a drink. That's it." That's so nice of him. I want to hang out with this guy.
What a pal.
Yeah. Smith then attempted to ram 2 patrol cars in the midst of getting all 4 tires flattened by spike strips. So the goodwill ran out quick.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. By the way, officers retaliated. Smith was eventually tased and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer.
They went from drinking buddies to tasing him.
Well, it can go downhill quite quickly, Jess. You know, it goes from a casual drink to here's some electricity in your ass.
feel like I've had nights like that at the bar back in my youth.
Yeah, you went from a casual drink to electricity in your ass.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
That's a hot date right there, sister.
For real.
For real. It was aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer, battery on a law enforcement officer, 2 counts of resisting arrest, DUI, refusal to submit to a DUI test, and petty theft. So he's got a laundry list of charges waiting for him. That does sound like a full night. I'm not going to lie. By the way, Jess, if you're gonna get revenge on somebody, take advantage of the current political climate.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, take full advantage. Seize every opportunity. Get your full revenge. Sink your teeth in, and really get that person good.
I can't wait to hear about this.
We're staying in Florida because they know how to do it right. A Florida woman has posed as an ICE agent to kidnap her ex-boyfriend's wife.
Dang.
That's cold, isn't it? Yeah. We're deporting you. Psych.
Oh, that's evil. That's bad.
LaTrance Battle is accused of robbery and impersonating law enforcement. I kind of want him back, and I kind of want to send you to a different country. And if I could, I would. So I'm going to pretend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the moral of the story. A Florida woman has been accused of trying to kidnap her ex-boyfriend's wife, according to the Bay County Sheriff's Office. In a release, deputies said the situation happened on April 10th, which is when they were called to the Bridge Plaza Apartments complex about a suspicious incident. Upon arrival, deputies met with a woman who claimed she'd been kidnapped, the release states. Investigators said they were able to figure out that another woman, identified as LaTrance Battle. By the way, I once did a LaTrance battle with somebody in a dance-off. It was really...
Did you win?
Oh, I did, totally, with the LaTrance battle, because you look them deep in their eye, and they're like, and they freeze like deer.
And they can't move.
Yeah, and then they can't move, and then you pop and lock like this. Did you see how I did that?
Yeah.
Only people on video could see that.
If you're not watching video, you're missing out.
You really are. Can you do that? Try.
Can I pop and lock?
Can you pop and lock? Can you?
I don't know. I can do the running man. I can do the funky chicken. I can do all kinds of, 90s moves.
I'm surprised I could still do that with a broken neck.
I feel like you get extra points for that in your dance off.
Yeah. My LaTrance
The fact that
battle.
you're broken in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm broken thank you. I am broken in so many ways. I have a lot of exes to thank for that.
Oh.
Anyways, we're back to the LaTrance battle.
Yeah, at least they didn't try to kidnap you.
Yeah, right. Investigators said they were able to figure out that another woman, identified as LaTrance Battle, had come to her workplace and identified herself as an ICE agent.
Thanks.
I kind of feel like that happens a lot lately, so you don't know. It's kind of like showing up to somebody's work as a Domino's pizza delivery person.
It's kind of scary because I don't think they're very well identifiable, right? So it could be like anyone.
Get yourself a windbreaker, put ice on the back of it. That's pretty much, that's your Halloween costume, because no one's going to know whether it's real or not. Yeah.
That's a bad Halloween costume, and yet also really good.
It is. Yeah. Well, according to deputies, Battle had dressed herself up in a black shirt with ice painted on the front.
Painted.
And wielded a sheriff's office business card and handheld radio. So out of fear, she went along with Battle into her vehicle.
Wow. She doesn't know her husband's exes. I think I know all of my husband's exes. I would recognize them right away.
So if they showed up in a nice T-shirt with a pan,
yep.
Do you think the paint was still dripping off the ice so it looked like menacing? Or do you think she actually did a decent stencil job?
It's hard to say. Maybe she puffy painted it, like you do on your kids' like pants and stuff.
Yeah, puffy paint. That'd be cute. Like a cute ICE agent. Right?
Little emojis around it. Yeah.
Little flowers and hearts.
Little glitter.
Yeah, glitter. Stripper ice. I'm here to arrest you. Put these cuffs on. Yeah. How fun. How fun, the ICE agent. How fun. The victim confirmed that she genuinely felt as if LaTrance was an ICE agent at the time, and she's in the process of becoming a legal U.S. resident, the release reads. So don't arrest her.
That's so scary. I feel really bad for her. That would be terrifying.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. But while they were both in the car, a battle forcefully snatched the woman's phone from her as she tried to contact her lawyer and husband. Gimme! Investigators also said that when the duo arrived at the apartment complex, the woman suspected something was wrong, as Battle told her they were headed for the sheriff's office. As LaTrance went inside the apartment, the victim fled and called law enforcement. As she should, because I don't think ICE agents take you to their apartment.
Yeah, that's like really bad planning on that lady's part. You're just going to pull into your apartment and then like leave them in the car so they can leave?
Yeah.
I'd be running.
At least take them to somewhere that looks like it could be the sheriff's office. You know, or a building where you're going to hold them, like a warehouse.
It's so weird.
Yeah. In an affidavit, deputies said that the victim then called her husband while waiting for law enforcement to arrive, and he claimed that the abductor sounded a lot like his ex-girlfriend, Tracy. After speaking with neighbors, deputies said they discovered that a woman named Tracy, who was later determined to be Battle, indeed lived at the apartment complex. Wah, wah. Yeah. Not a good plan there.
No, that's definitely stupid criminal.
Yeah.
She took her home.
Whoopsie. Oh, Tracy. Once the victim's husband arrived on the scene, he had started an injunction against his ex, LaTrance Battle, or Tracy, for issues they had had in the past. The most current incident was about 2 years ago when LaTrance showed up at his place of business and attacked him. That's not going to get him back. I'll tell you that much. Per the sheriff's office, Battle was eventually located in Fountain while on her way to Alabama. She was ultimately arrested and now faces charges of kidnapping in commission of a felony, robbery by sudden snatching. Can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody arrested for that. Impersonating a law enforcement officer in the commission of a felony and a felony violation of probation. Yes, that's right. She's on probation, kids. And she's being held without bond. So, LaTrance.
That's a whole lot of trouble there.
That's
For a guy they've been gone like apart long enough that he's married. Let it go, lady.
Yeah. Well, you know, some people can't let go.
That's true.
And that's okay. For those people, it's just medication and therapy. But, you know, for those people too, maybe physical distance is important. Maybe we need to move to another state. And I don't know, maybe find a hobby. Finding a hobby is a good thing, you know, maybe dating others. Okay, maybe not dating. Maybe dating is a bad thing. Maybe celibacy is a good thing. I don't know. Maybe my advice is horrible. All right, Jess, our next story has to do with and by the way, this comes from one of our listeners. If you have a story for us, tim@darknessradio.com if you would like to hear your dumb crime or stupid criminal. I don't know if you're committing the dumb crime. If you're committing the dumb crime, probably don't send it in. But if you have a dumb crime or stupid criminal you'd like us to report on, send the story to tim@darknessradio.com. This story comes from one of our listeners. A man confesses to stabbing his dad to death during a 911 call, saying God told me to. I don't think God ever tells you to stab your dad to death, but here's the story. We go to Ohio, where an Ohio man is accused of killing his father after he confessed to the crime during a 911 call. Nearly the first thing out of, wow, this is a name, Micaiah Swindler's mouth on the phone with dispatchers is, I'm not going to lie, I just killed my father. The dispatcher said, wait, what? Micaiah says, I killed my dad. The dispatcher says, what do you mean by you killed your dad? Micaiah says, like he's dead. Marysville police said officers had been to the house earlier in the day responding to a dispute between Swindler and his father. Police identified the victim as 59-year-old Joe Swindler. A police report shows the issue started over a dispute over doing the dishes. So Micaiah killed his father because he didn't want to do the dishes.
Yikes, that's scary.
Jess, how many times would you be dead in a week if the kids didn't want to do the dishes?
Everyone would be killing me all the time, Tim. Multiple times a day on the weekends.
This kid's a little spoiled. Hours later, another call to the home from Micaiah, who said he stabbed his father with a knife. The dispatcher asked him why he stabbed his father to death. Micaiah said, God told me to. The dispatcher said, God told you to? Micaiah said, yes, ma'am. I had orders. I had orders. Neighbor Rich Digney said he witnessed police take Micaiah away, adding he was very calm at the time. Oh, that's good. We'd like him to be calm, especially if he's been touching sharp objects. In court, prosecutors called him dangerous. That's an understatement. A judge set Micaiah Swindler's bond at $1 million. Probably not enough. His next hearing is scheduled for May 1st. Stabbed dad because, by gosh, someone's got to go.
I don't want to do the dishes, Tim.
Yep. Just imagine if he had to, take the garbage out. Whoo! Is there a loaded gun in the house?
That kid's scary.
Telling me. Heaven forbid you ask him to move something heavy. Go move the furniture. Curtain for you, Dad. All right. I'm going to show you a picture of a nice little old lady here. There she is. There she is right there, Jess. Take a look at that lady right there. Isn't she nice?
She's adorable.
Oh, isn't she?
I love her hair.
Oh, I mean, you know what they say? The higher the T's on the hair, the closer you are to God. Right?
Her hair looks kind of like mine did when I first got on the screen.
Right?
Whoa.
I mean,
I looked crazy.
Well, I don't know about crazy, but you were about 2 inches away from reaching heaven there. I mean, you were up there a bit.
Only in the one spot, though.
Only in the one spot. That's right. Well, this woman, this lovely, lovely young lady that I just showed you the picture of, is all of 88 years old. And she was just out for a little stroll on her scooter. You know, her little 3-wheel scooter. She's just
scooting around.
Tootling around. In another instance of gray-on-gray crime here, Jess, an 88-year-old woman, the one I just showed you the pictures of, is accused of fleeing the scene after plowing her SUV into the mobility scooter of a 77-year-old victim who was thrown from the electric vehicle and hospitalized for her injuries.
Oh, no.
That's right. Grandma's got a fetish for plowing into people. She loves that contact.
She looks all sweet and innocent, but underneath that big bouffant is rage.
That's right. Oh, that's a good way of putting it. It's rage. Investigators say Carolyn Segrist was driving in the parking lot of a Sam's Club in Clearwater, Florida. The octogenarian rage capital of the world, Clearwater, Florida. At around 8:30 a.m. yesterday, when the crash occurred, Segrist, cops charge, struck Laverne Hampton's mobility scooter. I think that's the name of a song. Laverne Hampton's mobility scooter. With the front of her Buick Envision. Yeah, she hit it with her SUV.
Oh,
I wasn't lying when I said that.
Wow.
She meant business.
Think they were fighting over a man?
I hope not. Hampton was thrown from the scooter and was hospitalized for her injuries. Oh, my God. Howie. Segrist allegedly did not stop at the scene of the crash to render aid or exchange information.
Straight up hit and run.
It was a scooter hit and run. Could you have seen this? Wham! And then she gets out and goes, "Are you okay, dear? Hold on, I'll be right over to get your information." So who insures your scooter? I don't have scooter insurance, by the way.
No.
No, nobody insures my scooter. I wish they would, because
You're gonna start getting calls now.
Yeah, because I beat that thing to holy hell and back. I probably need a new one. For 4 hours after the incident, police arrested the retired octogenarian for leaving the scene of the crash involving serious injury, which is a felony, by the way. Segrist was booked into the county jail and scheduled for an initial court appearance. Segrist lives about 4 miles from Sam's Club in a condominium she purchased with her husband in 1987. In 2023, she pleaded, oh my God, she's been in this condominium since I was a junior in high school.
Wow, that's a long time. Also, she's 88. So she probably moved there like right when she retired.
88. That was also the chant of my senior year. 88.
That was a good year.
It was a good year. In 2023, she pleaded guilty to careless driving that resulted in a crash. I think she should probably stay off the road.
I think it's time to take that license away.
By the way, she was fined how much, Jess, for that traffic infraction back in 2023? Little careless driving.
$5,000.
Oh, that's way too high. No, Miss Buffon, a little lower.
I'm never going to win the prices right. $500.
Close, but let's take one more swing. Let's go a little lower.
A little lower than that even? Wow. Yeah. Okay. $100.
Close. $166.
Wow. That's cheap.
That's why driving and hitting people in Florida is a sport. Because it's cheap. Yeah.
It's a budget activity.
It is. That's why it's cheaper to hit people in Florida than to go to the movies. So by all means, just pile the kids into the car and go hit old people.
That's bad advice, Tim.
Maybe a little.
Disclaimer, we really don't want you to do that, folks. Well,
you might not, but it's cheaper. I'm not lying.
Well, I guess if they do, we can talk about them.
That's right. We're just getting future stories for the show, Jess.
Oh, gosh.
Well, think about it for a second. Okay. How much would it cost you to take, let's just say, you, the hubby, and 2 kids to the movies on a Friday night?
I mean, aren't tickets they're close to $20 now.
It's got to be $15. Let's just say on a regular night, $15 each, right?
So $15, and then you're going to buy everyone popcorn,
right?
And sodas. You're not going to the movie without popcorn.
It's $20 a piece, so that's $80. That's $80 just for the refreshments alone. $15 for the tickets. That's $140. It's almost cheaper. Yeah. It's at $140. It's almost cheaper for you to go out and hit an old lady. And think of the entertainment. While you're waiting for
it's definitely cheaper than going to like Disneyland, taking the kids to Disney.
Yeah, it is cheaper than going to Disney. Yeah. I mean, we're not advocating hitting an old lady and watching her writhe in pain by the scooter, but hey. But that way you can teach kids about anatomy too. As she's laying there with the broken bones, you can say, look at that compound fracture. Now, see, if we were to repair that, here's what we'd do.
See that femur poking out of her skin?
Yeah. This is how we fix it. We're not going to, but this is how we fix it. See?
It's all about education.
That's right. It's all about education, Jess. See? And that is how we spend our Saturday nights. In Florida, not here. Speaking of Florida, a Florida man was, by the way, this is another story from another one of our listeners. My S's are important. That's what they tell me. A Florida man is busted on an Amtrak train with a small arsenal of weapons. Small arsenal in quotes, air quotes.
I feel like if it qualifies as an arsenal, it's not small enough.
By the way, he also is the Cowardly Lion, if you can see his picture. There it is.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
He was.
Yes, the Cowardly Lion was busted with a small arsenal of weapons on an Amtrak
If they
train.
were casting for the modern day Cowardly Lion, that would be the dude.
Either that or the Cowardly Lion had sex with Post Malone. Don't you think?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The Cowardly Lion and Post Malone had a baby.
Yeah, and there it is. 34-year-old Jeffrey Kennerk, a 34-year-old from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, was indicted after being caught with a small arsenal of weapons on an Amtrak train in Trenton, New Jersey. The discovery began when a New Jersey transit police officer noticed an unattended zebra print suitcase. Of course it was. At Newark Penn Station. Inside, authorities found a handgun with a loaded 18-round magazine, an AR-style magazine, and an AK-47-style rifle with multiple loaded magazines. What was he doing with all those guns? He's going to a peace rally. No, he wasn't. Kennerk was found with assault weapons, large-capacity magazines, handguns, silencers, and a booby-trapped rifle that discharged during his arrest.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, well, surprise.
Everything was loaded.
Well, except for him. He faces several charges, including possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, aggravated assault, and endangering others. New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin stated this defendant allegedly hauled a small arsenal of deadly weapons and ammunition through busy transit stations and on a train filled with passengers. Deputy Attorney General Karen, I believe this is Brachusk. It's a great
Nailed
Polish. It's a great Polish name. I didn't stick the landing. Will lead the prosecution against Kennerk as soon as we figure out what her last name is, and remains in custody awaiting trial. Kennerk, not the prosecutor, although we should jail her for her last name. Yep. That's for sure. All right. I believe it's time now for our Not Safe for Work section of our program. For this, we need you to do one of two things. We need you to get rid of the boss or get rid of the kids, one or the other or both, because, hey, they can't be around for this. We've warned you this week after week after week. I don't know how many times we've told you this. It's not good for the kids, not good for the boss. If the boss hears this, he's going to think you're a freak. If the kids hear this, they're going to think you're a freak. So we're going to give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go, kids. All right. I mean, not kids. I mean, you're supposed to have them out of the room. All right. This first one has to do with a love triangle with one person headed for jail after a wrench attack on a deputy. I know, word salad. Let's figure it out together, shall we? A head teacher attacked his deputy with a wrench after being hit by an overwhelming sexual jealousy due to a love triangle at the school.
Yikes.
Yeah. You ever have this happen when you were a teacher?
Nope.
Nope. You went to a boring school. You worked at a boring school.
I did. And I was a sex ed teacher. I mean, I should have known all of the dirt.
You were a what?
I was.
How come I'm finding this out now?
Have I never told you that story? Oh my gosh. So funny. My first, before school started, I had to go in and set up my classroom.
Yes.
And I was much younger then. And I mean, I generally look 10 years younger than I actually am at any given stage of life. And I was walking into the school and the football players were on their break from two-a-days or whatever. And they were all sitting around and they started hooting at me. And one of them was super vocal about how hot he thought I was. And then the first day of class, he comes walking into sex ed and he's like, "Hi, Mrs. Freeberg," with his head down. It was great. I'm like, welcome to class where we're going to talk about your penis and vaginas.
And try not to blush.
And how babies are made.
That's right. You get your chocolate and your peanut butter, and that's how it happens. See, I wouldn't be able to use the technical terms. I'd be a bad teacher.
That was my favorite part, the technical terms, because they're so funny. Like the male anatomy, like it has the epididymis, like that just rolls off your tongue. Just say it with me. Epididymis.
Isn't epididymis a Greek god?
Close.
See, this is why I'd fail. You know what? My best friend in high school and we couldn't say the P word in high school because it was such a bad word. It just sounded.
You couldn't say penis?
No, because it sounds so. It's such a bad word for it. There's so many other great words for it other than me.
They're all bad words. Like vagina is a gross word. Like it just sounds harsh and weird.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of 1,000 other terms for it that sound much better than. I mean, it's just a bad sounding word for it. Who looked at it and went, let's call it a
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know. Epididymis is about one of my favorite words in the whole dictionary.
Yeah, epididymis. I mean,
it's just fun.
He's the one who killed Goliath, right? I don't know. I mean, I get my history mixed up sometimes too.
You're close enough, Tim.
Yeah, something like that. Anyways, our story. A head teacher, get it? A head teacher attacked his deputy with a wrench after being hit by overwhelming sexual jealousy due to a love triangle at the school. 54-year-old Anthony Felton admitted attempted grievous bodily harm with intent after the attack at St. Joseph Roman Catholic Comprehensive in Aberavon, Neathport, Talbot on March 5th.
In a Catholic school.
Of course, it's a Catholic school. They're all repressed sexually. Of course, they're going to hit each other with tire irons and shit. 51-year-old Richard Pike was treated for minor injuries in the hospital after Felton sought him out and attacked him from behind, which is a classic wrestling move. If I've ever heard it, it's like, too much WWE for these guys. Felton of, I believe it is it Penharrow, I don't know, road somewhere in Swansea, was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months on Friday, and Judge Paul Thomas KC said he suspected a head teacher. What is a head teacher, by the way? Of attacking.
Didn't have that in public school. There were no head teachers.
No, I could tell you that from some of the girls I dated in high school. Said he suspected a head teacher attacking his deputy was entirely without precedent. The court heard Felton was distressed after finding out he was the father of a fellow teacher's child and had recently discovered Mr. Pike was in a relationship with the same teacher.
Whoa,
we just went to a whole nother level. In a victim impact statement, Mr. Pike told the court Felton, whom he trusted completely, brought a metal wrench into his office and rained a number of blows on him. And we're not talking those kind of blows, if you know what I mean. Mr. Pike fell to the ground and attempted to kick away Felton before being helped by colleagues who heard the disturbance. Following the attack, which was caught on CCTV, Felton threw the wrench away and drove off before sending an email to all staff apologizing for the problems and distress his actions were likely to cause. Mr. Pike said Felton had manipulated me into a position of complete vulnerability. That's one way of putting it. I thought we were trusted colleagues who had over many years built up a relationship of trust and understanding, he added. It terrifies me still. I feel I have lost so much of me. I'm not sure I will ever come to terms with that. Giving his remarks to Felton, Judge Thomas cited the upcoming sentencing of a 14-year-old girl who attempted to kill 2 teachers and a pupil at a school in Ammanford, less than 25 miles away from Felton School. You knew as well as anyone could have known the current prevalence of violence in our schools. Instances of pupils taking weapons into school and attacks on staff and fellow pupils are an all too common feature in the media. The appalling example of this episode sets to others needs no emphasis from me, is the quote. He told Felton he was more than intelligent enough to realize the ramifications of his plot would be far-reaching. He added, he had been lured by you into what was, in effect, an ambush. Sexual jealousy rising from an adulterous affair and the uncontrollable rage from you had led to his ultimate downfall. John Hipkin, KC, defending, the lawyer that is, said Felton had recently suffered due to the death of his mother and a cancer diagnosis. But the judge told him ultimately the trigger for your act of extreme violence was of your own doing, the overwhelming sexual jealousy arising from an adulterous affair and the uncontrollable rage it created in you. Abul Hussein of the Crown Prosecution Service said the level of unprovoked violence from a professional in the workplace was shocking. Too often we see attacks of this nature result in life-changing injuries or fatal consequences, and thankfully, that was not the result in this case. Felton was told his sentence would have been 3.5 years without an early guilty plea, and he would serve half his sentence on license. He was also given a restraining order in relation to Mr. Pike, his wife, and children for an indefinite period. Of course, in case you couldn't tell, this happened overseas. So there it is. All right, coming back home here, Jess. Of course, you got to have an airline story in not safe for work territory.
All right.
You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
It's the airline story to end all airline stories. We go to Southwest Airlines, where a passenger allegedly stripped naked, pooped on the seat as the plane landed.
Ew.
Well.
Why and why?
Why and why? Well, the bathroom was taken, I guess, right? And I mean, if you're going to get a good one in, you might as well get comfortable, right? And the best part of it, it was a female.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was she doing like OnlyFans like the lady last week?
Yes, the peace spree. Yeah. I don't know. She went excremental, it says here, as the first line in the story.
Gosh.
A female passenger on a Southwest Airlines flight to Chicago, of course she was going to Chicago, allegedly stripped down naked and pooped on her seat as the plane landed. I guess that's what she thought of the pilot's flight. Yay!
Maybe it was some sort of panic-induced irrational behavior. Like maybe she was scared.
We're gonna die! Police officers were called to Chicago's Midway Airport on Saturday as Flight 418 from Philadelphia. Okay, that explains it. It was somebody from Philly.
Oh, no.
You can send your emails to tim@darknessradio.com. Yes, it was Flight 418 from Philadelphia arrived with one passenger shocking the cabin by taking off her clothes and emptying her bowels on the plane seat. Just outright. And of course it was Southwest, so. Not saying budget seats create budget dumps, but hey, it can happen. Our teams are reaching out to those aboard to apologize for the situation and any delay to their travel plans or planes. It says to their travel planes. They got that one wrong, Southwest said in a statement. It should have been their travel plans, Jess, but they wrote to their travel planes.
And they can't spell.
No, they can't over at Southwest. Nothing is more important to Southwest than the safety of our customers and employees, and we appreciate the professionalism of our flight crew. What did they do? Go over and say, did somebody make a duty? Oh, yes, they did. Somebody made a duty. Can we clean that up for you? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. It wasn't clear what happened to the passenger. Well, my guess is they probably took a nap afterwards. It's a pretty big deal. I mean,
you're like a baby.
Yeah. The plane was taken out of service for cleaning, according to the report. Well, I don't think you would sit somebody in that seat right after, right?
Oh.
I mean, would you? And now here's a serious question here, Jess. Would you want to sit in that seat knowing somebody had just freshly dumped in it? not even 6 hours prior?
We're not even freshly, like ever. If anyone has ever taken poop in the seat I'm going to sit in, they should take it out and burn it.
Remove that seat, throw it out permanently, take it to the dump. I mean, not dump,
yes.
dump, but you know what I mean.
Literally.
Yeah, take it to the dump and get rid of it. Last month, Southwest had a more serious mishap at Chicago Midway Airport. Seems to be a common occurrence when a landing jet had a near miss with a taxiing jet due to possibly a sun glare. And nearly went, but they didn't. That's real sound effects, by the way. Southwest did not respond to the Post's request for comment. I'm reading out of the New York Post because, reputable news source. Just saying. Okay. If you thought that was bad, I got a punny story for you. If you're ready for this one. Again, remember, we're in not safe for work territory, so anything goes.
Scary place to be, Tim, but I'm ready for it.
Serious story, punny outcome. The Son of Faith Life Church and their pastor pleads not guilty to 27 criminal counts, including 11 rape charges. Nothing funny about that.
Ooh.
But what's funny is where he was booked.
Where was he booked?
I'll tell you. Gary Thomas Kesey Jr. pleaded not guilty to 27 criminal charges, including 11 counts of rape in a Knox County courtroom on Wednesday. You ready for this, Jess?
Mm-hmm.
The 36-year-old Kesey appeared in court after being held at the Licking County Jail. Nature or nurture? You decide.
Maybe a little of both.
Yeah. He's been at the Licking County Jail since his arrest on Friday. Knox County Court of Common Pleas Judge Richard Wetzel set Kesey's bond at $2 million, less than half of the amount Licking County prosecutors overseeing the case requested. How would you like to be a Licking County prosecutor?
Your tongue would get tired.
I would think so, too. Kesey faces 11 counts of rape, 11 counts of gross sexual imposition, and 5 counts of sexual conduct with a minor. He's not a nice guy. Yeah.
Ugh.
According to the indictment, the alleged crimes happened between May of 2002 and October of 2011 and involved 3 victims who were all girls between the ages of 6 and 15 at the time. He's a sick bastard.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
Licking County Assistant Prosecutor Clifford Murphy argued that Kesey should be considered a flight risk. He said Kesey has access to properties in the U.S. and Canada and access to a private plane. Kesey's defense attorney, Sham Shamansky.
What a name.
So he's Sam Sham, pretty much. Argued against this, refuting Murphy's arguments. People may think this is a fake story. It's not. With respect to risk of flight, Judge, I'd like you to consider the following. These are facts. These aren't flights of fancy, Shamansky said. My client does not have access to a private plane. He doesn't own a plane. Doesn't have a pilot's license. He doesn't intend to flee. Being a flight risk generally refers to a defendant who is likely to flee the state or country to avoid criminal prosecution, not necessarily by plane. Shamansky said Kesey has known about the investigation for months and hasn't fled. It's been no secret that these accusations have been swirling on social media and around his parents' church community, Shamansky said. Kesey is the son of co-pastors of Faith Life Church. His mother, Drenda Kesey, is a Knox County commissioner. Kesey held different roles at the church over the time the abuse allegedly took place. Licking County prosecutor Jenny Wells, I said that with a straight face, said some of the abuse happened while he was also a minor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Judge Wetzel ordered Kesey to surrender his passport and driver's license. Kesey will also wear an ankle monitor if he's released. By the way, Licking County prosecutors took over the case from Knox County after Attorney General Dave Yost decided not to pursue it. I just like saying Licking County.
You're doing it so well. You're not even giggling when you say it.
Well, I try not to. I'm a professional. I am a news professional.
Yes, you are.
Licking County. You lick it, you brought it.
How many licks does it take, Tim?
To get to the center of the story? A 1, a 2, a 3. 3. Our next story, Jess, has to do with a doctor who spied on colleagues due to his concerns about his small manhood.
Ooh.
Now I can laugh. I didn't want to laugh at the last story, but I'll laugh at this one. A doctor who secretly spied on 30 different people claimed he only did it due to his concerns about his small manhood.
He just wanted to know if theirs were bigger than his?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Supposedly.
Okay.
34-year-old Ju Young hid tiny cameras and air fresheners and a smoke alarm in the bathroom and spare bedroom of his flat in Hindland in Glasgow's West End. He was hiding it in somebody's end, I'll tell you that much. Also discreetly filmed a friend and doctor at staff accommodations in Dumfries and Galloway Royal Infirmary. The anesthetist, who also worked in Glasgow, denied doing anything illegal. He instead is claiming he has body dysmorphia, which is a condition which, this is such bullshit, a condition where sufferers obsess over apparent flaws in their own appearance. Said this was only diagnosed after he was arrested.
Oh, yes. Well, it's 2025. There are other ways to view other men's privates. It's called porn.
Yeah, or do it in the shower like most of us do at the Y. God damn it. The doctor insisted that he was born with a small penis and used the footage to compare with other men. Just come out of the closet, dude.
I mean, that's one way to get sympathy, I guess. Like, I'm not a pervert. I just have a really small penis.
Yeah, I'm just really small bone.
I mean, look at it. It's tiny. You can't even probably see it.
It's just teeny tiny. However, a jury at Glasgow Sheriff Court decided that sick acts were done for his sexual gratification. His tiny, tiny weenie. Was found guilty to a total of 23 charges against the Sexual Offenses Act between November of 2020 and August of 2023. He really needed to measure up. It took almost 3 years to measure up.
It's a long study.
Well, you got to be thorough, Jess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of his 30 victims, Jess, 21 were men and 9 were women, because women have weenuses too.
They do. They're just really, really small. That probably made him feel better.
Well, evidently he had microclit syndrome. I don't know. 3 of the men and 1 woman were doctors. So he wanted to get a really good look at the doctors, I guess.
I don't know.
He was playing doctor with the doctor. The court heard that initially recorded his first victim in secret with a mobile through a window while he showered. I think this guy has a few kinks. Later attached a camera to a smoke alarm of the fellow doctor's bedroom at the hospital. The footage also captured intimate footage between this man and his partner. Fiscal Lauren Atchison, asked the doctor what he thought about actions. He replied, "It makes me feel shocked, betrayed, and disgusted, not only because it invaded my privacy, but now my wife's as well. I feel like I let her down, letting this person into our lives, someone who I trusted in work in a professional capacity. I feel let down and horrified." Another doctor was filmed on the toilet at house in the city's Hindland. He initially knew from university and went to dinner at his house. The doctor stated that he was shocked and betrayed upon learning that he had been discreetly filmed. Jurors were told that a further medic had 9 recordings of him showering and using the toilet over a 3-month period. Rented out his spare bedroom to others at the Hindland property on Airbnb. Miss Aitchison said in her closing speech to jurors, violated their trust. He recorded them naked, showering, using the toilet, and on some occasions having sex. I think he got the trifecta there. Pretty much.
He's just researching, Tim. He's innocent. He's not a pervert.
No, he's a scientist. That's, I guess. He had the videos saved automatically into a folder which was backed up on hard drives and pen drives just in case. Oh, he was thorough.
Oh, yeah.
He's a thorough pervert. Told jurors in his evidence that he was diagnosed with suspected giantism when he was a teenager, which was possibly why he had a small penis.
Huh.
What?
That seems counterintuitive.
I have giantism, and that's why my wiener is the size of a thimble.
Listen, son, you're a giant. Therefore, the ratio of your body to your penis just makes it look small.
That's right. I know I'm only 5'4", but I'm a giant. Somebody was told a lot of fibs as a kid, right?
Oh, weird.
Right? Wow. Jurors heard that did not seek medical help until 20 years later for his giantism. Ms. Aitchison added his diagnosis of body dysmorphia does not come until after he was arrested. He said all these years led to extremes of secretly recording people. Why wait until you're caught to get private treatment? That's right. A good question. Further said he did not want to view images on Google in case he came across illegal photographs, but he'd rather illegally record people.
Yeah, I think when you're like, positioning cameras up on fire alarms or whatever he was doing, wherever he was putting them, that's when you like have to just self-reflect and be like, maybe I need some help. Like if that truly is your issue, like maybe I should call someone.
Maybe I'm one toke over the line, sweet Jesus. Yeah. Could be. He also claimed that he did not view pornography as it was exaggerated and bigger than your normal male.
Oh, I guess they wouldn't use small guys.
That's not a good. It's not a good control, I guess, for your experiment. Stated that he also did not compare himself with his patients as they were people who trusted him, as opposed to the people staying in your home. This guy is weird.
He has boundaries. They don't make sense, but he has boundaries.
Yeah, he's out there. Still of Heinlein is believed to have been laterally working as a lecturer. Oh, yeah, he's the guy to tell you how to do stuff, especially how to install cameras and smoke alarms. Sentence was deferred pending background reports until next month by Sheriff Owen Mullen. Was granted bail and put on the sex offenders register in the meantime, as he should be.
Oh, yeah.
All right, one more story, and then we've got our palate cleanser for today. Literally don't have a cow, New York man, is the headline on this one, Jess. Yeah. Don't get all excited yet.
Art Simpson's in the house, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. In the course of a child porn probe targeting his younger brother, an upstate New York man caught a legal ricochet shot when investigators discovered videos showing him engaged in sexual acts with animals, including a cow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim.
I told you you're going to need that palate cleanser.
Oh, I need something to vomit in, actually. So gross.
38-year-old Mark Banks was arrested earlier this month for sexual misconduct for allegedly having sexual intercourse with a dairy cow on the property of Windsor Acres, the Broome County farm where he has worked for 22 years.
Wow.
Move on over. Here I come. A New York State police investigation originally focused on Banks' brother, 37-year-old Christopher, for possessing child porn transmitted online. Sounds like a real winner. When police executed a search warrant at Christopher's residence, which he apparently shares with his sibling, they scooped up an assortment of electronic equipment. Of course, there's electronic equipment involved. A review of the seized materials resulted in the filing of a felony charge against Christopher for possessing a sexual performance by a child, a school cafeteria employee. Christopher was immediately fired by the local school district. Of course, he works for the school.
Oh, gosh. If you're these guys' parents, what did you do wrong?
What did you do right? I think is what needs to be asked.
Maybe that list is shorter.
Yeah, I think that list is shorter.
Oh, man.
I feel like I need a shower from a fire hose right now.
I mean, two kids with distinctly different sexual perversions, both horrifying.
Yeah.
Come out of the same family. Like, what was happening in that house?
Children or cows?
Boy,
In a handwritten statement given to police out of my own free will, Mark wrote that the state police found some videos on my device today involving sex with animals, adding that when I was younger, I had sex with a cow. Brace yourself here, Jess. This next sentence, not easy for me to read and not easy for you to hear.
Okay.
After describing the illicit act, Mark wrote, I did not ejaculate, but did so because of a sexual urge. It didn't work at first, and I shifted the bucket and tried again. This did not happen again after that.
Wow. He shifted the bucket. And like the visual right now that I have. Let's not isolate that soundtrack either, ever. These are not Tim's words.
Ding!
Yikes.
The Banks brothers are due in town court Thursday morning to answer the criminal charges. The Class A misdemeanor Mark faces carries a maximum 1-year jail term. That's it? 1 year?
What?
Does the cow get counseling?
Well, I mean, I guess if I had to pick one to live next door to me, I'd totally pick the brother who's into cows over the one that's into kids.
Yeah.
You can have my cow all day long. Touch my kids, I'm going to kill you.
You can pet my cow pervertedly, just don't touch my kids. If convicted of the child porn count, Christopher faces up to 4 years in custody. That's it.
Wow.
Upon conviction, each of the charges carries the additional penalty of having to register as a sex offender, whether it be cow or child.
That's not enough. I'm sorry.
You ain't milking either one as far as I'm concerned. All right, it's time for the palate cleanser.
Please.
If you thought Woody was the only naughty woodpecker out there, turns out there's more than one. This woodpecker has damaged more than 20 vehicles in a Massachusetts town.
He's a bad boy.
I got a picture of him right here. There he is, right there. See? 20.
No, but he's cute.
He's cute. By the way, I have the funniest impression of a bad bird ever. I'll tell you about him here in a second.
Okay.
This particular bad bird, if I can get the story here, is in a seaside Massachusetts town, appears to have fallen prey to an overzealous pileated, not Pleiated. It's doing dances. Pileated woodpecker that damaged more than 20 vehicles, according to one resident. For weeks, Rockport locals have dealt with broken car windshields and side mirrors. This can happen. I'll tell you how this can happen in a second.
And they were probably like, those dang kids in this neighborhood trashing our vehicles.
Right, but I'll tell you how it happens in a second. Resident Janelle Favaloro was able to capture a photo of the culprit, a large crow-sized bird whacking away at vehicles. We seem to have a vandal in our neighborhood. I'm describing him as 18 to 24 inches tall, wearing black and white and a red hat, Favaloro said on NBC's Today Show. She said the woodpecker is responsible for damaging at least 25 vehicles. The woodpecker showed up and landed on the windshield wipers of the RV in our yard and was looking at its reflection. And we were like, you know what? I bet he was the one that damaged the mirrors as well. The pileated woodpecker is nearly the size of a crow and has white stripes down the neck and a flaming red crest, according to allaboutbirds.com. Oh, look at this. Look at this cute little guy right there. Look at him.
Oh, he's like the classic Woody the Woodpecker.
Yeah.
That redhead.
Look at him. Ron McGill, Zoo Miami's communication director, said one reason for the woodpecker's aggressive behavior could be the result of peak mating season. There's an even simpler answer for this, Jess. This time of year is breeding season, so all these male birds, not just pileated woodpeckers, but all birds are getting into aggressive territorial courtship display. If they're seeing reflections of themselves, this is what it is, they don't understand it's a reflection. They think it's a competitor, so they attack it.
Like, let me at him, let me at him.
That's right. So they're like, oh yeah. So To explain what happened to me, I was hosting a trip in the Philadelphia area, Dannybrook trip for Chad Kalick, formerly of Paranormal State.
Yeah.
And I got in a rental car. I had driven from the Philadelphia area up to Dannybrook, which is about 20-25 minutes. I parked it in the side yard. It's a little tiny little. It was a kind of a, not a small car, but a medium-sized car, right? For some reason, and I had parked it a little ways away from this little tree. For some reason, this little bird comes up, and I do an impression of the bird. Are you ready? If you're watching on camera, you'll see it. This little bird comes up, and for some reason, comes up to the side mirror, and it's, right? I imagine this is what this bird looks like. Right? And starts humping this mirror and then shitting all over the side of my door. And then goes up to the side of the door and, right? And shitting all over my door, shitting all over my mirror. And I'm like, what in the hell? It keeps doing this all weekend, right?
No.
My car is full of scratches and full of shit. And it's a rental.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, what in the actual fuck? So we managed to shoo him away long enough for me to get in the car, take it into town, get it washed, and move it all the way over to the other side of the house. This bird still went over, found it, and again,
what was his deal?
I don't know. It had an attraction for my car.
The color of it, maybe, or
it was black, same as the bird. But it humped and shit all over my car all weekend long.
Bananas.
And there were scratches all over it.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm trying to explain to the rental company, I couldn't help it. It was a horny bird. It was humping and shitting and humping and shitting. And they laughed at me and they're like, well, we don't know if there's going to be a charge for this or not. I'm like, I can't help the bird.
They're like, that's a new one. No one's ever used that excuse for car damage before.
What was I going to do?
Wow.
Yeah.
Birds are crazy.
They are, aren't they?
Your car was a sexy beast.
It was, yeah. Evidently in the bird community, it was, I don't know, Cindy Crawford. I had no idea.
Dang.
Yeah. It was tall and leggy. And it looked exactly like the bird that was staring at it. I don't know.
I just like thought it was a really big, sexy bird.
Yeah. It just, it couldn't get enough of itself. It's terrible.
Had a big bird fetish and it thought it hit the jackpot with that car.
Oh, it went nuts. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Yikes. It's a wild one. What a good palate cleanser, though. Thank you. I needed that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So
traumatized me a little bit with the last stories there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. But
it's all right. I'll get therapy this week and I'll be okay.
Okay. Just charge it to this show. I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up this week, but let's not make it a habit. So that'll do it for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. Jess, what do you have going on in your world?
Well, besides therapy, just writing the books, friends. So if you haven't gotten a book yet, go get a book. That's my request. I have an event coming up in December, but we haven't announced it yet. But we'll have a couple of things coming on the bend here.
I still got to finalize things to get you out to the Palmer in August for autographs for pooches. Yeah, so
I'm here for it. That'd be fun.
Yeah. So we got to get that. We got to get that finalized. Yeah, but I got to put stuff up for that yet too on the website. So yeah, friends. By the way, autographs for pooches in August 2nd at the Palmer. Yeah, Tim Miley and his lovely wife Lauren will be back. What else? Yeah. If you're watching this show on video, which you should be, the original Darkness Radio on YouTube, or just go to darknessradioshow.com and watch the video that goes along with this audio. Sometimes I'm a little slow at getting the video up. That's what she said. Just watch the video when it gets up
But
there.
it always gets up eventually.
That's what she said.
Just be patient.
That's what she said. That's what he said. Yeah, but it gets there. So there you go. What else? Check out the store at darknessradioshow.com. We want to thank our executive producer, Troy Palmer. Thank you for everything you do. And I think with that, we'll remind you as well that our guest today, his project, Mike Turber, his project is called Money Machine. The documentary, we have the link in the description of this program. Be sure to click on that link and check out that documentary. It's again about the Route 91 Harvest Festival and the different ways that the Las Vegas Police Department kind of bumbled that investigation. We also have the link to the video of Mike taking Laura Loomer from Fox News up through the elevator at Mandalay Bay to the 32nd floor. Again, Mike did that as a security consultant 57 times after Steve Wynn said that it had been locked down. 57 times. Yeah, we've got that video of him taking Laura Loomer from Fox News up to the 32nd floor and walking around and engaging different employees. We've got that video in the description of this program. We also have video that Mike has provided us of that day, that fateful day of the Route 91 Harvest Festival, of the actual shooting, of the actual event, and from different security cam. So check out that video as well in the description of this program to see exactly what happened that day. It's a fascinating video and tells you exactly why it's hard to survive in that type of situation. So fascinating show today, Jess. Fascinating show. And again, if you're not seeing the video, or if you haven't seen the video, if you're listening to the show on the audio podcast, check out the video, the original Darkness Radio. Like and subscribe on YouTube, or check it out at darknessradioshow.com. All right, for Jessica Freeberg, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us today on the big program. Join us tomorrow for Supernatural News. And thank you for listening and watching the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday.